My name is Emily Johnson, and I never thought I would be the type of woman to ruin her own marriage. If you had asked me 10 years ago what I wanted out of life, I would have told you the picture-perfect dream. A husband who loved me, a warm home, maybe kids someday, and the kind of steady peace that people write novels about. For a long time I had that. My husband, Daniel, was the most loyal, kind-hearted man I had ever known. He was the kind of person who always asked if I needed a glass of water before going to bed, who remembered the way I took my coffee, who never raised his voice at me no matter how heated an argument became. We met in college in Chicago, both of us young and full of hope. He was studying engineering, I was studying education. From the moment he smiled at me across the campus library, I felt safe with him. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't the guy all the girls chased after, but there was something about his steady presence that grounded me. We dated for 3 years before getting married, and I thought I had won the lottery. My friends used to say, "Emily, you've got the dream guy. Don't ever let him go." And I believed them. But the truth is, life doesn't always stay magical. Years passed, and our days became filled with routine. Work, bills, laundry, the occasional dinner out. We lived in a nice house in Denver, Colorado, surrounded by good neighbors. Daniel worked hard as a civil engineer, often coming home late, while I taught at a local elementary school. We loved each other, but somewhere along the way, I started feeling restless. It wasn't Daniel's fault. He was still the same loyal man I had married. But I found myself craving something else, something exciting, unpredictable, something that made my heart race the way it used to when we were 20. I didn't realize then how dangerous those feelings were. That was when I met Jason. Jason was everything Daniel wasn't. He was charming, loud, adventurous. He came into my life like a whirlwind one evening when my colleague invited me to a community fundraiser. He was a photographer from Los Angeles, temporarily in Denver working on a project. He had this effortless charisma, telling stories about his travels in Europe, about nights in Paris and mornings in New York City. His life sounded like a movie, and compared to my quiet evenings with Daniel, it was intoxicating. I should have walked away. I should have remembered the vows I made to the man who had given me nothing but love and loyalty. But instead, I let Jason's words pull me in. We began talking after the fundraiser, texting, meeting for coffee. Soon, I found myself spending more time with him than I ever admitted to Daniel. It wasn't physical, at least not at first. But it was emotional, and that betrayal was enough. Jason made me feel alive again, like I was 20 and invincible. He would say things like, "You're too young to live such a predictable life," and instead of seeing the poison in those words, I believed him. One evening, after months of hiding, I sat Daniel down. He had just come home from work, tired as always, still in his work boots, dirt on his hands. He smiled at me and said, "Hey, how was your day?" And I, selfish, foolish me, looked into those kind eyes and told him I was leaving. "I met someone else," I said. "I need something more exciting." I will never forget the look on Daniel's face. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just stared at me as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He whispered, "Emily, I gave you everything." And then he left the room. The next week, I packed my bags and moved into Jason's apartment. For a while, it was exactly as I had imagined. Late-night drives, music blasting, spontaneous trips out of town, rooftop dinners under the stars. I felt free, wild, alive. Friends who heard about my new relationship said things like, "Wow, Emily, you're glowing. You made the right choice." And I believed them. But excitement doesn't last forever. Soon, Jason's flaws started to show. He was impulsive, reckless with money, and had no real sense of responsibility. At first, I laughed when he forgot to pay the electricity bill or when he shrugged off important commitments. But then it became exhausting. He would disappear for hours without telling me where he went, sometimes even days. He thrived on attention, constantly surrounded by people, while I sat in the background wondering if I even mattered. One night, I asked him, "Do you even see a future with me?" He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Emily, I don't plan futures. I live in the moment." That was when the cracks in my fantasy began to widen. With Daniel, I had stability, loyalty, safety. With Jason, I had chaos. And as much as I told myself I wanted chaos, my heart longed for the peace I had thrown away. Months passed, and Jason grew colder. The texts slowed. The compliments disappeared. I started to feel like an accessory in his life rather than a partner. And then one evening, it all came crashing down. I had cooked dinner, trying to surprise him after he came back from a photography trip. He walked in, dropped his bag, and before even tasting the food, he said, "Emily, this isn't working. You're holding me back." Those words cut deeper than anything I had ever heard. Holding him back? I had left my husband, my home, my life for him. And now he was tossing me aside like I was nothing. That night, I sat on the floor of the tiny apartment and cried until the sun came up. For the first time, I realized what I had done. I had traded a diamond for a stone, a man who would have walked through fire for me for someone who couldn't even stay for dinner. I tried reaching out to Daniel. I called, I texted, I even drove by our old house. But he didn't answer. Eventually, a neighbor told me he had moved on, sold the house, transferred to a different city for work. He had cut all ties, and I couldn't blame him. It has been 2 years since that night. Jason is long gone, probably off chasing his next adventure, while I sit alone in a small apartment in Denver. Every morning, I wake up with the weight of regret on my chest. I think about the nights Daniel rubbed my feet after a long day, the way he would leave little notes in my lunchbox, the way he always made sure the car was filled with gas so I never had to worry. I left loyalty for excitement, and in the end, I lost both. Sometimes people ask me why I don't just move on, find someone else. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever deserve another chance. I had everything, and I threw it away. I told myself the grass would be greener, but all I found was emptiness. If I could go back, I would choose differently. I would choose Daniel 1,000 times over. But life doesn't give you rewinds. It only gives you consequences. So now I live with mine. And that is the story of how I left my loyal husband for someone more exciting, and why I regret everything.